apologizing profusely. Only when I saw Uncle Helen's son did I realize this was orchestrated. He insisted on calling police, creating an official report that painted me as distracted and careless. The deposition for Bobby's defamation case was scheduled for the following month. Our lawyer prepared me for grueling questions designed to make me appear unstable. They'd use every family incident, every protective measure, as evidence of my irrational behavior toward a reformed man. Mom's visitation requests escalated. She petitioned for unsupervised visits, citing the successful supervised sessions. She included affidavits from family members attesting to her character and my unreasonable restrictions. Each filing required response. Each response cost money we didn't have. I started noticing cars following me during errands. Different vehicles, but always maintaining the same careful distance. When I mentioned it to our lawyer, he said proving coordination would be nearly impossible. They'd learned from the group chat evidence to be more careful. The fourth supervised visit brought new manipulation. Mom spent the entire hour telling the girls about family traditions they were missing. Birthday parties, holiday gatherings, summer barbecues, all painted as magical events stolen from them. She never mentioned why they couldn't attend. Bobby's presence grew bolder. He started jogging past the visitation center during our visits, timing it perfectly to cross our path. He'd wave at the girls through the window while maintaining legal distance. The supervisor documented it, but technically he wasn't violating any orders. Our home became a fortress of anxiety. We installed more cameras, added window sensors, and kept curtains drawn constantly. The girls asked why we lived like we were hiding. I struggled to explain without terrifying them or poisoning them against family they still loved. The deposition arrived like a storm. Bobby's lawyer questioned me for 6 hours, dissecting every decision I'd made since his release. They painted my protective measures as paranoid delusions, my documentation as obsessive behavior. I maintained composure, but inside I felt myself cracking. 2 days later, Jane's teacher called with concerns. Jane had written a story about a family torn apart by a mean mommy who wouldn't let anyone visit. The teacher recognized the emotional distress and suggested additional counseling. Another expense, another acknowledgement of how this war was damaging my children. Mom's next move was calculated. She began attending the same church we'd switched to after leaving hers. She sat across the sanctuary, dabbing at tears during services. Church members who didn't know our history saw a grandmother separated from her grandchildren. Some began avoiding us. The financial pressure mounted. We received notice that Bobby had hired a second attorney, someone known for aggressive litigation. The message was clear. They could afford to escalate. We couldn't. My husband suggested borrowing from his 401k, but I knew that would only delay the inevitable. During the 5th supervised visit, something shifted. Mom dropped her careful facade for just a moment. When the supervisor stepped out briefly to use the restroom, Mom quickly whispered something to the girls. I couldn't hear it through the monitor, but I saw their faces change. Jane looked scared, Lily confused. In the car afterward, neither girl would tell me what Grandma had said. They exchanged glances but remained silent. That night, I found them huddled together in Jane's bed, whispering. When I entered, they immediately stopped talking. The secret Mom had planted was growing between us. Bobby filed additional motions in his defamation case. He claimed lost wages from jobs he couldn't get due to my slander. He demanded access to my social media accounts, email records, and personal journals. Our lawyer fought each request, but judges often favored broad discovery. The family's pressure campaign evolved. Instead of direct contact, they began a whisper campaign in our community. Parents at school received anonymous letters about the family situation. Local businesses where we shopped got calls questioning our mental stability. Slowly, our world shrank further. Sarah warned me that Mom was planning something for the holidays. The group chat buzzed with cryptic references to Christmas justice and reunion planning. They'd learned to speak in code, making their intentions harder to document. The 6th supervised visit was scheduled for December 23rd. Mom arrived with a bag of wrapped presents the supervisor had to inspect. Each gift was appropriate: books, puzzles, art supplies, but each carried subtle reminders of what the girls were missing: a puzzle of Mom's house, books about family traditions, art supplies, and Uncle Bobby's favorite colors. That evening, I discovered why the girls had been secretive. Lily finally broke down and told me what Grandma had whispered. She'd said Uncle Bobby had presents for them hidden at her house, special gifts he'd made himself. If they could convince Mommy to let them visit, they could have them. The manipulation was masterful. Now my children had a secret with their grandmother, a promise of gifts from the uncle I was protecting them from. They didn't understand why I was being mean about presents. Jane accused me of ruining Christmas. On Christmas Eve, we found 3 packages on our doorstep. The security cameras showed they'd been left at 3 a.m. by someone in dark clothing who knew exactly where our blind spots were. Inside were handmade dolls, clearly crafted with patience and skill. The note said, "Love, Uncle Bobby," in careful handwriting. I wanted to throw them away, but the girls had already seen them. Taking the dolls would make me the villain who stole Christmas presents. Keeping them meant Bobby had successfully invaded our home again. I compromised by putting them in the garage, promising we'd figure it out later. Christmas morning was subdued. The girls opened their presents without enthusiasm, clearly thinking about the dolls in the garage and the mysterious gifts at Grandma's house. My husband and I exchanged worried glances over their heads. We were losing this war of attrition. The day after Christmas, our lawyer called with bad news. The judge in Bobby's defamation case had ruled partially in his favor. While dismissing the wage loss claims, the judge found that I had potentially damaged his reputation beyond the scope of protecting my children. A trial would determine damages. I sat in my kitchen, staring at the legal documents. We couldn't afford a trial. The retainer alone would bankrupt us. Mom and Bobby had succeeded in their war of financial attrition. I had to make an impossible choice: surrender or lose everything fighting. That night, I found my husband in the garage looking at the dolls Bobby had made. Each was crafted with disturbing attention to detail, dressed like our daughters. The implications made my skin crawl, but legally, they were just gifts from an uncle. We had no proof of sinister intent. The next morning brought another blow. Jane's best friend's mother called to say they were switching schools. The drama surrounding our family had become too much. Other parents were considering the same. My daughter would lose her friends because I insisted on protecting her. I made my decision during the 7th supervised visit. Watching Mom manipulate my daughters with practiced ease, seeing their growing resentment toward me, feeling the financial noose tightening, I knew I had to change tactics. I couldn't win by playing defense anymore. more. After the visit, I instructed our lawyer to offer a settlement in Bobby's defamation case. The number made me sick. $30,000 we didn't have, but it was less than a trial would cost. More importantly, it came with conditions Bobby couldn't resist. The settlement included a permanent no-contact agreement, broader than the restraining order. Bobby's greed won over his desire for access. He accepted the settlement, probably believing he'd find ways around it later. We liquidated our retirement accounts to pay him. It felt like paying ransom to a kidnapper, but it bought us something precious, a stronger legal barrier. Mom's reaction was swift and vicious. She filed for expanded visitation rights, claiming the settlement proved I'd been wrong about Bobby, but our lawyer had anticipated this. The settlement included Bobby's acknowledgement that continued contact could be detrimental to the children's well-being. The judge reviewing Mom's petition saw through her manipulation. He noted the pattern of escalating behavior, the coordinated harassment, and the use of supervised visits to undermine parental authority. Instead of expanding access, he reduced it to quarterly visits with stricter supervision. Mom aged years in moments when the decision was read. Her investment in Bobby had cost her everything: her retirement savings, her relationship with her grandchildren, and now even her limited access. She'd gambled everything on forcing her will and lost. The family group chat exploded with rage and disbelief. Sarah sent me screenshots of their meltdown. Some blamed Mom for pushing too hard. Others turned on Bobby for taking the money. The coalition that had terrorized us for months fractured into bitter factions. We used the breathing room to rebuild. Jane's school agreed to implement additional security measures. We found a new therapist who specialized in family manipulation dynamics. Slowly, carefully, we began explaining age-appropriate truth to the girls about why Uncle Bobby couldn't be around them. The quarterly visits with Mom became less traumatic. With stricter supervision and reduced frequency, she couldn't maintain the same manipulation. The girls began to see her as a distant relative rather than a central figure in their lives. It wasn't ideal, but it was manageable. 6 months later, Bobby violated the no-contact agreement. He sent birthday cards to each girl through a third party. Our lawyer immediately filed for contempt. This time, the judge had no patience. Bobby faced jail time or a substantial fine. He chose the fine, further draining Mom's resources, since she still funded his legal battles. The extended family gradually retreated. Without Mom's money funding their campaign, and with the legal barriers solidified, most found it easier to move on. A few maintained their stance, but their individual efforts lacked the coordinated impact of the group assault. On the anniversary of Bobby's release, I sat in my backyard watching my daughters play. They laughed freely, no longer looking over their shoulders. We'd paid a terrible price: financial ruin, family destruction, months of terror, but they were safe. Their innocence was scarred, but not shattered. My husband joined me, bringing coffee. We didn't need words. We'd survived by choosing the battles we could win and accepting the costs of those we couldn't. The war wasn't over. It never would be completely, but we'd achieved what mattered most. The girls ran to us, faces bright with joy. They'd adapted to our new normal with the resilience children possess. They understood now why some family members weren't safe, why love sometimes meant keeping distance. Hard lessons learned too young, but learned nonetheless. As I hugged them close, I thought about the price of protection. Every parent would pay it without hesitation, but few understood the true cost until the bill came due. We'd paid in money, relationships, and innocence, but watching my daughters play safely in our yard, I knew I'd pay it again. The restraining order would need renewal eventually. Mom would get her quarterly visits. Bobby would likely probe for new weaknesses, but for now, in this moment, my girls were safe. Sometimes that's the only victory that matters. Not winning the war, just surviving each battle and protecting what you love most. I find it curious how the mom aged so much when she lost. Was she truly believing she was doing the right thing, or was this about control all along?